Alright, what's going on, guys? Chapter 393 of HunterXHunter, Entreaty. Let's get right into it. Okay, so on the first page here we have The Assassin Invades. Now, as you guys remember from the previous chapter, Luini created a portal in the door and was mocking the spiders. Now, he's got a proposition for the spiders that I did not expect. He wants to work together with them to destroy the other Mafia groups. So essentially, he wants to take down the Cha-R family, then he wants to move on to the Shiyu family, after that attack the Kaken Royals, and then seize the ship and go back to the old world and just wreak havoc and destroy the entire world. But Nobunaga, seeing this guy as an ignoramus, just slashes him right in the head and basically puts an end to all of that. And he even says, if you do what you did at the warehouse with no intention to fight, then you're a nincompoop. If you say you're gonna destroy the world, then I'm gonna destroy you. Now, this was a very badass moment by Nobunaga, but at the same time, we still didn't learn anything about his Nen ability. Now, Nobunaga shows the various other Cha-R members that he took care of Luini, the guy from the warehouse, and that's that. They don't have to worry about anything anymore. And with this, Finks is like, well, okay, we're done here. Now we're gonna go back to looking for Hisoka. But if they happen to learn more information about where the Haley boss is, they'll take care of her first. Now, elsewhere, we see a bunch of members of the Haley family looking at the bottom half of Luini's corpse. The various members are Daemon, a real estate agent, Gelato, a pro gamer, Perigord, private eye assistant, Billy, a game center employee, Bacanti, a disappearer and smuggler, and Matver, a college student. Now, Daemon mentions that losing the Luini is a huge setback, and that's because he was the best guy at hunting prey down. Now, Perigord says that, well, how about we just have someone manifest the same ability as Luini, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. Everyone has their own innate type and abilities. They then talk about, well, are there any abilities that can destroy handcuffs turned into pigeons? Of course, they're referring to Hinrig because he used that ability on Paduli. Now, Morena explains to them that everyone's offensive and defensive powers are different, depending on their experience, skill, aura, capacity, and such. However, based on their levels of creativity, they can change those outcomes. And she basically tells her subordinates to look at it like a game. Now, one thing that's really interesting about this exchange is that the various members of the Haley family are very new to Nen. I mean, they just got their abilities just a couple days ago. They're still learning them, they're still trying things out, they don't exactly know how to employ tactics or anything like that, so they're very wet behind the ears, and this makes them very vulnerable in the future, especially going up against the Shiyu and Cha-R families. Now, there is something that could sway the balance in their favor, and we'll talk about that in a bit. We then go back to Lynch and Zakaru. Now, Zakaru tells Lynch that Hisoka decided to watch a movie, and the moment that he took his eyes off of him, he lost consciousness. So, not only did Hisoka take out Lynch, he also took out Zakaru as well. However, he was quite generous. He didn't kill them, he just knocked them out for a brief period of time. Now, Hinrig is told where Hisoka is, and he makes his way to auditorium number 8. And sure enough, he sits right next to Hisoka and says, Hisoka, I presume? Now, this is kind of an interesting exchange because what Hinrig does right here is he offers Hisoka a pass to the entertainment area of Tier 1. Now, as it turns out, the Cha-R family, the Phantom Troop, and the Shiyu family have all joined forces to go against the Haley family. Now, if Hisoka were to go up against the Phantom Troop, that would make the Cha-R family that much weaker, which essentially would mean that Hisoka is fighting with the Haley family. Although he might never make a deal with them, he might not make an alliance with them, he'll still be fighting on their behalf indirectly just by the mere fact that he's taking out the Phantom Troop. And in the midst of the chaos, that could mess up the plans for the Cha-R family and the Shiyu family. So, to mitigate all this, Hinrig is giving him a pass to sort of take him out of the playing field. Get him off by the sidelines until a later date, once the Haley family is effectively eradicated. Now, Hisoka actually says something interesting here. He's like, I don't mind at all. I kind of like the chaos. So even though things are going to get very chaotic in the future, and even though he might have to go against the entire Phantom Troop all at once, he's embracing the challenge. Now, Hinrig mentions that the Haley family is trying to disrupt the balance between the three Mafia families. And so what they want to do is eliminate the Haley family and restore the balance between the Cha-R family and the Shiyu family. Hisoka then diverts the conversation to a question. He says, who do you think will win, me or the troop? Hinrig's like, well, I'd have to root for the spiders. I mean, it should be an obvious answer. I mean, it's Hisoka against 13 members of the Phantom Troop. It seems like the Phantom Troop should win quite easily, but it is Hisoka we're talking about here. You never know what's gonna happen. We also have to take into consideration that Chrollo just defeated Hisoka at Heaven's Arena not too long ago, so I mean, the mere fact that Chrollo can take down Hisoka by himself would suggest that the 13 members should be able to take him down relatively easily. Hence the reason that Hinrig doesn't believe that Hisoka would win such a battle. Now Hisoka's like, well, who in particular? And Hinrig's like, well, all of them. Now, Hisoka extends his hand to take the pass from Hinrig, however, he decides not to grab it. And he says, I can't refuse a fight if they come at me first. Now, the soldier that made the deal with Hinrig in the previous chapter is now approached by Wang of the Cha-R family, and he wants to learn the same information that Hinrig is about to learn himself. So he's also going to pony up the $50 million to find out the secret location of the Haley family. Now, Wang promises the soldier that he will kill all the members of the Haley family, and then he gives him a smile. Now, the soldier doesn't like this because anytime that Wang smiles at someone, they eventually die, and I kind of like Wang's response here, and he's like, what a rude rumor, though. Everyone dies eventually. Which, you know, he's not wrong, but it is a very devilish-looking smile. It looks a little bit creepy, I'm not gonna lie. Now, Wayne and Hinrig are eventually led to the room by the mysterious soldier. Now, they get to the room and they open the door, but when the soldier goes through the door, he disappears. Now, Hinrig and Wang are wondering what's going on, so they decide not to walk into the room themselves. And now, the old man inside the room just keeps saying, I have nothing to hide. Now, Hinrig tosses a knife that goes right by his head into the wall. Now, the knife doesn't disappear, so it's kind of strange. A person disappears, but not an object. And the man repeats himself one more time, and then we get the flavor text of denial for the third time. And that's the end of the chapter, guys, and what an exciting chapter that was. So my first thoughts are, I believe Hisoka might be making some sort of tenuous alliance/bond with the Haley family. Now, it'll be very temporary, he'll only use it for a short amount of time, but I believe he'll do this so that him and the Haley family can go up against the Cha-R family, the Shiyu family, and the Phantom Troop. This will allow Hisoka to focus on the Phantom Troop, and this will allow him to sort of distract maybe members of the Phantom Troop with the various members of the Haley family. It will create a chaotic situation in which Hisoka can sort of position himself so that he doesn't have to deal with all 13 members at once. We also do have to consider that Illumi is part of the Phantom Troop, and he's probably going to backstab him at some point, or at least that's what we would think he would do. So it might be Hisoka and Illumi against the 12 members of the Phantom Troop, along with the various Mafia families as well. So it's a very exciting situation that's building up here. I also think it's interesting that Hinrig admitted to Hisoka that he was nowhere near his level in terms of Nen ability, which is a very wise and calculated decision on his part. I mean, if he was boisterous and headstrong, he'd go in guns blazing and probably get killed in a minute. So it's smart of him to recognize this, and I would guess that most of these Mafia members are much weaker than Hisoka and much weaker than the Phantom Troop. So it makes me think, like, for example, if the various Mafia families were to all go down at some point, let's say all the Mafia families get eradicated due to all the fighting between the Phantom Troop and Hisoka, where does that leave the bottom decks? And what does the Kaken Empire do against them? Do they send down the various princes to handle them? Do they send down the various bodyguards of the princes to go down to them? Does this create an all-out war between the top and bottom decks? Very fascinating stuff. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more methodical than that. We won't get there for a long time, but it's very interesting to speculate on. Another interesting thing about this chapter is Nobunaga. Does he not have a Nen ability? Is he just simply a samurai? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he was, but I would have thought at this point we would have seen his Nen abilities, so it's kind of interesting that Togashi has kept that secretive up until this point. But yeah, I think that's all I really got to say about this chapter, guys. A lot of interesting developments. Tell me what you thought of this chapter in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the flip side.